You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing pretty well. The now wife and I have already begun our battle of the thermostat, where I am trying to save money and it's already I know it's November, but it's unseasonably cold here already. But I like living cold. We got a really nice duvet for the wedding on the wedding registry, and you know what? I am sweating like a pig under it. So at nighttime, I keep sneaking out there and turning down the thermostat. Get it down to we're on the fourth floor of an apartment. Hot air rises. We don't have to pay for it. We can just live off the heat from the apartment unit. Well, okay, that's okay. But then she flips it back up in the day. So we're almost leaning into the stereotype.
Yeah.
Just for the comedy of it. We're both big fans of sitcoms. She's a big Friends fan. I watched that with her. Also, kind of an older one. This will date me, but we watched a good amount of Mad About You. You ever seen that sitcom?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Helen Hunt. Yep, that's enjoying that dynamic, and that just seems something like they'd be into too. So, just we're probably grossing a lot of the single people or unhappy relationship people out there rolling their eyes, but and not painting a picture of rainbows and unicorns. We get after it too, if you know what I'm saying. We're both passionate and opinionated, but. So I'm freezing my ass off, and hopefully she will not hear this, but I don't want to admit it. But right now I'm just freezing my butt off in the bedroom recording this right now. So how are you doing? I know you've had don't want to get into anything too personal, but your things are hopefully looking up from here on out.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a week, just some family things going on, but I've still got a lot of good going on, and obviously getting to talk football, man. I mean, it's. You and I have talked about it just off air of how much this just helps us deal with some of the daily life stuff. We love this. We have fun with this. So
it's not work.
Yeah, it is not. It is not one bit. So, we appreciate you guys joining us and listening. We would do this even if you weren't listening, just because we love talking football. But no, we do appreciate that you join us. And I'm excited for this weekend, man. Some great football, even if the Broncos aren't playing. For anybody that's college football, there's some crazy matchups and some crazy prospects that we talked about on this show on Monday. And so there might be some of those. Hey, you heard them on here. You should probably go check them out and see them live and see what they can do. But also, we'll probably be tweeting about some of those things going on. So make sure that you're following us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and welcome back to Building the Broncos. Well, with the Broncos not having a game this Sunday, they have their bye week. This is usually the time we always do the preview episode. Well, obviously we can't preview a game this week, so we love to do kind of just a look back on the season that's been so far, 8 games. And kind of see where our 9 games. They just got their win, 3-6. Got to give them their win. But, no, we like to kind of go back and just kind of give our midseason awards for the Broncos. Who's doing good? Who's doing bad? I mean, we got the MVP and the GOAT all in one here. And, so we're going to start off with our awards ceremony here with the best surprise player of the year. And also, I just want to let you know, as we're going through these, I highly recommend that you tweet us your answers if you disagree with us, because you know that we are the end-all be-all on everything Broncos. But no. So, Nick, who is your best surprise player of the year?
Well, for me so far this season, and, this might be a little bit of a shock, and I'm not sure. I tried to give you a little bit of a a fairness in this, so I didn't fill them all out when I was doing the outline. So it was kind of like a snake draft, so to speak. I did half, you did the rest, and then I got what was left. But I was going to go with this person either way, and I figured the other person is one you went with. But I went with Derek Wolfe. I mean, turning back the clock, Derek Wolfe has been playing incredible football so far this season. I would argue that, Von Miller is definitely the most valuable player up there in that Broncos entire defense, but playing as good of football as far as output and the roles they're in and executing, Derek Wolfe is up there with anybody. He leads the team in tackles for loss. He leads the team in sacks. He is playing as good at the point of attack in the run game as he has ever, which has always been a strength of his. But it's just this ability to get after the passer and the scheme and just playing like a whole new Derek Wolfe. And I know it's a contract year. He's a little bit older guy. He's had some injury issues. That makes you pause whether or not you should retain him. But after Justin Simmons, and this is a big reason is that because of youth, but after Justin Simmons, I think we're going to be approaching an argument where Derek Wolfe is the next guy you need to resign. Not Chris Harris Jr., not the younger Connor McGovern. Derek Wolfe. He's that important. And after that, the defensive line, they don't have anybody else that's really filling his skill set right now. You have Purcell, who's playing that nose tackle and has some good pop there, some good power at the point of attack, but not really much of a pass rusher. Also getting way too many personal fouls. That's another topic. And then you have DeMarcus Walker and Draymond Jones, who are both, kind of 285, 290 pounds kind of guys, but they don't carry the weight like Wolfe does. They don't win at the point of attack. They can't two-gap like Wolfe has shown. Maybe they'll get there at some point, but they're definitely not there right now and haven't seen that on college tape or NFL tape. So Derek Wolfe, major surprise, and he has been playing so damn well this season. So, hats off. What a guy, and I love that he is a Bronco through and through. He wants to be here, and that says something to me as well.
For sure. You're right. He's having he's benefited from Fangio being here as much as anybody. And so he's perfect fit for this defense, having just an outstanding season. Can't wait to watch him continue. But of course, I have to go with the guy that I think is probably one of the most obvious, Alexander Johnson. This guy just won AFC Defensive Player of the Month for October. And he wasn't even starting in September. This is a guy that's, we were talking during preseason. We knew he was going to make the team, but he was still in a battle just to have a roster spot on this Broncos team. And then, of course, they bring in, all of a sudden I'm spacing the other linebacker they brought in right at the beginning of the season. Corey Nelson. There we go. I knew I was going to get there. But
don't say that name.
I know. I shouldn't.
Do you think, the hypothetical, I'm sorry to cut you off here, but I've been kicking this around too. Do you think the Broncos win that game week 1 if A.J. Johnson is playing instead of Corey Nelson?
I think there's a pretty good chance. You think about how much he's brought to the run game, his ability to get off blocks, to come downhill, make plays in the backfield. You think about a couple of those drives stalling out instead of being 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, where they're picking all those up, and they have finally a 3rd and 7. I think there's a huge chance the Broncos make a couple extra stops and maybe win that game. So it wouldn't shock me. You just look at this defense since him and Purcell both have come onto the team. It's just been night and day. And I'm going to talk about what Purcell's brought here in just a little bit, but it's really the combination of the two. But Alexander Johnson, he is just playing his role perfect.
Yeah.
He is, you talked about it on the show, I think the last one we did, of his ability to come downhill, make plays, blitz in that A gap, B gap area. The Broncos are playing him to his strengths, and it is really showing just what he brings to this roster. Now, is he a guy that's going to be that true 3-down linebacker that you're wanting to drop back in coverage all the time, that you're wanting to line him up man coverage against Travis Kelce? No. But if you can play him to his strengths, this guy can really go out there and destroy people. And obviously that's shown in him winning AFC Defensive Player of the Month. If anybody would have said that before the season started, that Alexander Johnson is not only going to be a starter, but a high quality starter for this team, honestly, I would have laughed at you. I think most people would have. But here he is, like I said, just being a quality starter for the Broncos, and just a huge surprise that really kind of opens things up when we come to the offseason. and you're talking about positions that need to be filled. I'm not saying the linebacker is completely off the chart now of team needs, but it's lesser than it was a month ago for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, how could it not be? You have a guy who's still, you have 2.5 years of control in Josie Jewell, who was playing better in this scheme, who at least is viable, especially as a backup. I mean, as your third linebacker, that's definitely a guy that you can feel okay with. And Todd Davis is playing good, and he's relatively cheap next year as well. And you could move on from him, but like, why would you? He is the brains of the defense. And right now, I'd argue A.J. Johnson might be the heart. You know, that the energy that he brings out there, the passion, just the hair flying everywhere. I mean, there's something to be said about that this defense, for as good as they've been, has been missing. So linebacker feels good. Obviously, you know, everybody wants to have the next Al Wilson. People see Luke Kuechly's out there, or Ray Lewis's, or Brian Urlacher's, but, you know, they can more than get by with this duo for the next year and a half and then kind of reassess from there. And maybe Vic Fangio, you can give him kind of a third round guy, fourth round guy, fifth round guy that he can kind of pick and cultivate into the guy for the future, replacing Todd Davis at some point. But short term, I feel pretty damn good about linebacker, and Alexander Johnson or AJ Johnson, whatever he prefers, unleashing his dinosaur has been just a huge part of that. Yeah, that's have you seen the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze?
Yeah.
And, you know, it sounds like the demons that come out to get that guy at the end. You know, the shadows come. They just pull him out. You know. Do you know what that was? The funny tidbit about my dad. This is my dad's name is Darren. A Darrenism. It's like, did you know that's the sound of like babies slowed down? Like that sound of that screaming is like babies that they recorded and then slowed them down.
Oh.
So babies sound like shadow demons. The more you know, folks.
It is. It's true. G.I. Joe.
The more you know. Speaking of screaming shadow babies, the biggest letdown player so far, Joe Flacco for me. I mean, I'm not going to waste too much time on this, but you trade a 4th-round pick for him, and I definitely thought he was going to be an upgrade to Case Keenum, but I was worried. I wrote an article while we were still over at 247 saying, I think Joe Flacco is an improvement, but folks, I am concerned shitless. I'm just going to start cussing on here. I don't even know. We're recording this later than normal, so the guard is down a little bit. I'm not drinking yet, but the Joe Flacco is so married to his protection, and the offensive line was a concern coming into this year. I think Joe Flacco kind of exacerbated that issue, along with Scangarello still getting his feet wet as a play caller and everything. But man, I couldn't be more let down with Joe Flacco, and I didn't have great expectations, but like, there's no way that he isn't the biggest letdown, because you were supposed to come in and at least get, you know, somewhat viable level there, and he was a complete and total bust. Just no other way around it.
I mean, it's hard to argue with that one. I went with Isaac Yiadom.
Yeah.
And I like this guy coming out of college. I did worry about his fit with Fangio, just because he's not always the best at getting his head turned around. I mean, I've said it on here, the Senior Bowl, I saw him get hit pretty much in the back of the helmet like 2 or 3 times because he had perfect coverage, but he just never knew where the ball was. And with Fangio's scheme, you have to know where the ball is. And I don't know. And then I got a little bit of hope coming from preseason where he was actually looking very competent. And then all of a sudden, that first game against the Raiders, he just got destroyed and he never recovered. And to the point that, did he even get a snap this last week? I don't think he got a defensive snap this last week.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And so to see this guy go from the number 2 with Bryce Callahan injured to now maybe 5th, 6th cornerback on this team and possibly not even on this roster next year, it was a little frustrating for sure just to see him lose his confidence that bad. I still think he has some potential, and I think if they can work with him and kind of get him out of his head a little bit, but at the same time, that's part of being a cornerback is being able to forget. Because you're going to get beat. Every cornerback out there, even the best of them, are going to get beat at some point. But it's your ability to come back from that. What do you do the next play? Do you still believe that you have never been scored on, kind of thing? You got to have that little bit of cockiness that you see from some of these guys like Richard Sherman. I mean, it's a confidence that's built in that he's actually played really well, but it still plays into his ability to play well. And with Yadam, I mean, he just lost it. And so just a letdown for me. Like I said, I just had some high hopes, especially what I saw from preseason, and just to see him where he's at now, it's just very, very frustrating for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about him actually at the gym today while I was working out, and I was thinking, it's kind of like Tankersley. Do you remember him? Clemson, drafted, I think, end of third round also.
Yeah.
He's just not a Yadam, just like Tankersley when the Dolphins flipped over. Not a scheme fit, but there are teams out there that play the high amount of press man, so hopefully this offseason, maybe they'll keep him just because he is still young. You have another 2 years of control, but he's not a scheme fit. It seems like he's on his way out. I mean, Bosby, better fit, Devontae Harris, Duke Dawson. You might be bringing in a veteran, Chris Harris Jr. Maybe, so there's a lot of fluctuation there, but he's just not a fit. So maybe a chance to recuperate. You're not going to get back that value that you spent on him, a compensatory pick in the third round, but maybe you can get a sixth, a conditional seventh. I mean, essentially what the Patriots got for Duke Dawson. And is that ideal? Is that what you want when you're drafting a guy like that? No, but you can get some capital back. You can move up just a little bit, and you can free up a spot, and also put that other player in a better position to succeed, which there's something to be said for that as an organization, in my opinion at least. So, yeah, moving on now, though. Yadam disappointment, Joe Flacco disappointment. Guys who have not been disappointments. Carl, I left it up to you for the more obvious one here, but I went with a guy who's been a little bit under the radar. The production hasn't been incredible, but I think the overall skill set and where the Broncos got him is, tip of the cap to the scout team. Malik Reed, undrafted rookie out of Nevada, and I'm not seeing so far the power, the pass rushing prowess or potential that we saw with. That sounds almost a tongue twister there with all the P's. That we saw with Shaq Barrett as a rookie. But Malik Reed, a little bit of that bend, a little bit of that speed. The thing that makes me really intrigued with him, especially in the scheme, is the coverage. He is just as apt rushing the passer, holding that edge, not great in the run game, but that's probably his weakest area, but he can do it. And then dropping back into coverage, hook zones, even some man in the flat. So Malik Reed, I've been really impressed with him. Maybe not the best rookie, but I'm going to throw a vote in for him here as the best rookie so far, and a guy that should be getting more hype than he deserves. Maybe it's somewhat the scheme. Maybe it's somewhat, playing opposite of Von Miller. He's going to get a little bit more one-on-ones. Duh. But Malik Reed is really holding his own and giving the Broncos a real nice surprise and some depth at that edge position going forward as, Bradley Chubb comes back next year.
So I saw a PFF article, I think, the other day, and he is rated as the 5th highest defensive rookie in the NFL this year.
That's insane. Obviously I always, hit the X button for a little bit of doubt when it comes to PFF and the grades. I love the counting stats and all the advanced metrics they hold, but the grades themselves, a little bit of doubt.
Right.
But still, that means he's not sucking. And it kind of validates. I don't want to be, when it doesn't match my eyes, PFF grades are trash. When it matches my eyes, hit and retweet all the time. But it's definitely, I saw that too, and I'm like, well, you know what? That's something.
Right. So, you definitely have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's still something to look at. And of course, I went Dalton Reisner. This is the guy that's been the best offensive lineman for the Broncos this season and looking like a true quality starter for a long time with the Broncos. And it's not only that, but he's a perfect fit for Denver, being a Denver native and growing up, 50 miles from Denver, if even closer than that. But he's been everything the Broncos could hope for as a second round pick and somebody that they can really build around for that offensive line moving forward, really add pieces around him to make it just even that much better. He's still been a little bit up and down at times. He has gone against some pretty tough competition this year, and he's had his rookie moments. But beyond that, he's still just in the run game. He has sprung some of the longest runs this season just with his ability to especially pull out there to the right and pick up a defensive end, edge, whatever you want to call him, and really spring open a huge hole for the Broncos. He's got that attitude that you really want. You were talking about that with Alexander Johnson being kind of the heart of the defense. I think there's a little bit of an argument for Dalton Reisner being the heart of the offense. because he really does bring that attitude that just really kind of ignites other players around him. So, I mean, I'm with you. You put Malik Reed first, actually, and kind of left me Dalton Reisner. And I'm not trying to downplay what Dalton Reisner's done, but I actually was thinking Malik Reed. Just cause he's just had a phenomenal season considering the circumstances, considering where he was drafted, and nobody should be expecting an undrafted rookie to be coming in and playing at this kind of level. And so for the Broncos, this has been a really pretty powerful rookie class that only seems to be getting better as the season goes. So that really just makes things look so much better for the future. So really, really impressive group.
Yeah, I agree with you, and some other guys are starting to show it as well. I mean, Draymond Jones has had flashes. At the Hollins, we just saw his first career sack, and he looked really good in that one, and obviously Noah Fant. We'll talk about some more of these guys coming forward there, so I guess I'll kick it off to you there. Best offensive newcomer, rookie or other, Carl?
So the offense, I mean, you would hope that it was going to be Juwan James, but he's had, 40 snaps this season? So,
if that,
and the snaps, he's looked really good. So I almost put him just because there's not been a whole lot of new pieces added to this offense other than Noah Fant, Dalton Reisner, and Juwan James. And so I guess I went with Noah Fant and this is a little bit of I guess recency bias, but you can tell if you can play this guy to his strengths, this guy can be a huge weapon for this offense. They haven't had the opportunity to do it so far this year, but now that they've got an athletic quarterback that causes edge players to have to pause just a little bit, they can't just rush around the edge with the hair on fire. Noah Fant can actually get down the field a little bit and be able to make those plays up the seam with those deep in routes, all those kind of things that he is so good at. And so for me, I think this is the guy that's really springing ahead. I think that this last game was not just a surprise, but I think it's just a springboard for better things ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And my guy that I have is, well, I guess you talked about him a little bit, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but Dalton Reisner, I can't imagine where this offensive line would be without him, and I do wish that he was playing next to a competent left tackle that would make the offensive line look that much better, but getting a hit that square that quickly with offensive line coming in and just obviously being a good player year one. I keep saying people saying he has all pro potential. I'm not going that far because Quentin Nelson is one of those guys for the next decade, and then you have DeCastro, Zach Martin, Brandon Scherf, et cetera, but Dalton Reisner, I definitely see Pro Bowl potential on the horizon, and that could be very soon. So playing really well, and I'm really excited about that. Like you said, was hoping for a guy like Juwan James maybe to be that one, but can't pick a guy who doesn't play. So Dalton Reisner for me.
All right, who's your best defensive newcomer? This will be the better conversation, I think.
Yeah, this one, it was easy as heck for me. Kareem Jackson coming in, playing great. I kind of comped him to a Malcolm Jenkins coming in, a guy who was a first-round pick, also just like Kareem Jackson, played cornerback for the Saints and then went to the Eagles and moved to that safety position. And he's kind of more of a matchup safety where you see him, he'll play single high, he'll play deep, he'll come down, he'll play nickel back, and he was a huge part of the Eagles beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl because he was the guy that was tasked more times than not to go up against Gronk. And obviously Gronk and Tom Brady are still going to get theirs, but he did pretty well. And Kareem Jackson, that's kind of the role I saw with him. I think Jackson has been playing just as good, if not a little better. And I think the biggest thing comes with Jackson is the physicality that he brings to the table. Jenkins is, I think, maybe a little bit better in man coverage if you're going to ask him to play in space, but Jackson coming down, especially coming down and playing the alleys when you don't have as speedy of linebackers and Todd Davis and Alexander Johnson, to have a safety to come down and have that presence. He's not Steve Atwater out there. He's not Cam Chancellor, but the speed and the coverage and the versatility from that position has been absolutely huge, and he's back there making plays. He's making plays at the line of scrimmage and preventing a lot of big plays. So I've been thoroughly impressed with the signing and play of Kareem Jackson.
Like you said, he's not Steve Atwater, but he's one of the most consistent tackling safeties I've ever seen. Like, if he gets a hold of your legs, you're going down. I don't think I've maybe seen him miss one tackle this entire season. But I mean, he's gone against some pretty big running backs, and he is not afraid to stick his head in there and do the dirty work. So that's great for the Broncos. I mean, I can't disagree with that one. I just decided to be a little bit different, but I went with Mike Purcell because he definitely deserves to get some huge credit for what he's done, especially for this run defense. I saw a stat earlier, I think it was a couple days ago, that when he is in the game, the other team averages 2.78 yards per carry. When he is off the field, they average 4.59 yards per carry. So you want to talk about what a guy can do. I mean, and you got to think Alexander Johnson's still on the field for those. So as much as, I mean, I know Alexander Johnson's been great for the run game, but Purcell, just himself coming on and off the field, makes that big of a difference for this run defense. And so he's just been a force. He's been a guy that's been getting in the backfield, making tackles for loss. He's been holding up on all the double teams. I mean, I've just been flat out impressed with this guy. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day about Derek Brown. And they were asking, why would the Broncos get him if they have Mike Purcell? I said, well, can you imagine goal line defense with Mike Purcell and Derek Brown on the field at the same time? Teams are not scoring on that. I'm sorry. They're going backwards every single time, and they're just going to have to sit there and say, we have to pass 3 straight times. So I've really been impressed with this guy. Like you said, his penalties, though. That was one reason I was thinking about not putting him on this list. He's got to be smarter. You can't have those stupid penalties. If he could eliminate those, he has been just a perfect piece for the Broncos this season.
I agree with you. He's been pretty good. I wish he had a little bit more dynamic ability as a pass rusher. You know, some Vita Vea, that hump move that he's got getting after the quarterback, or Dexter Lawrence, especially in this scheme. But, you know, we're talking about top 16 picks there. So the fact that you were able to get to bring in Mike Purcell and he's done what he's done has been pretty big for this defense. So it's been a good find, and glad that they're finding these role players, because that's, you know, we talk about the superstars and whatnot, but if you're thin and you don't have these role players stepping up for this kind of depth and this versatility, then you're going to have a bad football team. So it's a sign of good coaching, and it's a sign of coaches putting guys in places where they are winning and succeeding. So that's a good sign for things to come on the defensive side of the ball. But folks, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to continue the awards show right after this break.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. We are doing the bye-week awards show for the Broncos so far this season, and I'm going to go off here. The next category is Most Promising Player, and for me, it's got to be Courtland Sutton, right? I mean, having just an absolutely monstrous season. I've definitely had a little bit of doubt with Courtland Sutton, you know, running, I think it was the 4.5, 4.40, and never really showing much separation, the raw route running, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know what? He is playing like a number 1 wide receiver. I don't know if he's a top 10 wide receiver yet. It's kind of impossible to know that until the quarterback and offensive line is set a little bit better to give him a chance to be that. But, man, he is playing phenomenal football this season, and you know, it's definitely the offense lost some explosive ability moving on from Emmanuel Sanders. There's a reason the 49ers traded a 3rd and a 4th round pick for him. But, I mean, Sutton's been absolutely killing it this season. You know, getting almost 8 targets a game, averaging about 5 receptions a game. He's only gone over 100 yards once, but considering the passing offense and how they're trying to run it, that's to be expected. 4 touchdowns already, and just, I mean, having such a great season. So I've been really surprised with Sutton. I'm absolutely loving the splash plays that he's making, and the ceiling is it's higher. It's still higher. I mean, he's still growing as a playmaker and as a route runner. And as the offense grows around him, as he kind of takes his role over as number 1, it's hard not to think good things are just starting for the future star wide receiver, 2nd round pick wearing number 14 at that. Elway kind of not vindicating, but making up for Cody Latimer, and Courtland Sutton, my most promising player so far this season.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I can't wait to see him, if the Broncos can ever figure out the quarterback position, just what he can actually do with a competent quarterback that's consistently throwing the football his way. And I just love that this past week especially showed that they trade Emmanuel Sanders. And so you got to think teams are just going to absolutely make sure that Courtland Sutton is not the guy that beats him. Well, he still found a way to go ahead and beat him. So, I mean, his plays, that touchdown, probably play of the year, in my opinion. I know we're going to argue about that here in just a little bit, but I mean, just amazing. I can't believe he made that catch. But I'm going to go a guy that we've already talked a lot about, but Alexander Johnson. And I know the idea that he's maybe not going to be that true 3-down linebacker, like I said, not being able to go back into coverage. But I heard a comparison the other day that I thought was really pretty fitting. And Dante Hightower.
Was that me that said that? It had to have been in the last podcast.
It might have been. It might have been.
Because that's what I've been using for the usage comp.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, he's not great in coverage. Well, you know what? Fire him up the goddamn A-gap and let that center in the pass protection think about that.
Right. I mean, I think of like the 2014 version where he was able to go get 6 sacks, 105 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 13 quarterback hits. I think that Alexander Johnson can reach that kind of number for you. And I think he has that kind of potential, especially in this defense. If he was in any other defense, I don't think he is the guy that he is. But he is such a perfect fit in how the Broncos are using him and his ability to come downhill. I couldn't believe some of the ways that he was actually beating offensive linemen. He looked like a great pass rusher, actually, the way he used his hands to really keep an offensive lineman off of him, and his ability to understand timing and just, I mean, he looks like a veteran, not a guy that's just been starting for a month in the NFL. And so I think with him, he hasn't reached his full potential either. You think about this guy getting more experience on the field and understanding the defense more of what he's being tasked to do. I just think the Broncos found themselves a nice piece of the puzzle moving forward. One guy that could be a true guy that sticks around for a little bit. I do feel for him in the fact that he got into the NFL a little bit later in life. So, I mean, his peak years are not going to be as long as some other players that are just in their first year really playing in the NFL. But beyond that, I think if you can get 3 or 4 good years out of this guy, you're going to be really happy with what he brings to the table.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the thing is, he's also cost controlled for another couple of seasons as well. So, good player to have there. A guy I'm ready to break up with. For me, he hasn't been playing the worst, but I do think he is dealing with an injury, and that is Ronald Leary playing right guard. You know, with left tackle issues and the right guard issues, it's really hard to get too down on Ronald Leary this season just because, I mean, how many issues can you point to, right? Like, sit down, we're going to have a 2-hour-long podcast. But Ronald Leary, he's got 1 year left on his deal after this. He's 30 right now, and he's not playing great, and you can save $8.5 million from moving on from him with the offseason. I'm hoping that they can attack one left tackle spot next season, and I'm really also hoping that Juwan James, it being an even year, he tends to miss a lot of games on odd years and then play really well on even years. So next year, hopefully right tackle's set. And then you can kick over Elijah Wilkinson to right guard, where I do believe he's a better fit. But Ronald Leary, I mean, with how he's playing right now, which is not great, a little up and down, and the $8.5 million you can save from moving on from him, which is only, I think the dead cap is under $1 million. I mean, you got to do it. So probably Ronald Leary, a guy that time to say sayonara to in the offseason and look for something newer, brighter, and better.
Yeah, I mean, I was arguing between that guy and the guy that I'm going to say, and Garrett Bowles. I mean, I think everybody and their dog are ready to move on from that guy. I mean, how many people are sitting there saying, how can you keep trotting this guy out there? Well, it's because even the guys behind him are even worse. And so the fact that they have this problem with depth and everything is kind of an issue that they're going to have to work on fixing here as they move forward. But the fact that you're sitting here having the best offensive line coach in football, or top 2, I don't want to take anything away from Scar over in Patriot land, but no, it's easy to see this guy just has not grown at all since a rookie. And he still does the same thing where he gets about 4 games that give you promise, and you sit there and say, maybe he's turning the corner, and then he goes back to doing the exact same things he's done before. And so, I mean, it's easy to see that that's got to be probably priority number 1 or number 2, depending on the quarterback situation for the Broncos to fix in the offseason. I mean, it's why everybody, whenever they see a mock draft, I do it myself. If I don't see a left tackle pick for the Broncos in the first round, I'm kind of going, really? I mean, there's other players that I like, but it's still kind of a letdown when it's not one of the top left tackles, just because that position is so glaring. I don't know. Did you watch McChesney do his little video of Noah Fant's touchdown?
I have not seen that yet.
Oh, I love some of his breakdowns of film, but he was showing Garrett Bowles and how inept he was on that play. I mean, he just completely whiffed. And essentially, as the defender is going by Garrett Bowles turns towards Brandon Allen, and McChesney kind of fills in and just is like, "Watch out, Brandon!" And all of a sudden, Brandon just gets hit big time. I mean, obviously, it still led to a touchdown, but it just kind of shows Garrett Bowles pretty much almost blew up a really good play because he was just so inept out there. And so it's just it's time to move on. You can't have. It's not only that he's inept at his job, it's that he decides to compound it with penalties left and right. And so he just completely destroys drives. Like, I can understand if you are not physically able to do your job up to the skill set like Wilkinson. But if you're out there just deciding to destroy drives by getting lazy and grabbing a hold of the guy and just pretty much riding him to the ground, it's very, very frustrating to watch every single week.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. We're done. There's a reason we want to break up with him. So I guess next category, getting positive here, trying to counteract the negativity with a little bit of positivity, back and forth. Guy I can't wait to see more of. Noah Fant. Noah Fant coming off the biggest game of his career, and 3 receptions, 115 yards, and that 75-yard touchdown. I mean, wow, what a play. Bad tackling too, but playmakers make plays. And since the Emmanuel Sanders trade, Noah Fant has seen only 2 game sample size, but still 84% of the snaps, and that's all offensive snaps. 25% of the pass volume, which for a tight end that is really pretty significant, and 19% of the air yards, which also, at tight end, folks, that's fantasy football folks will know those numbers. Those are really high rates for any sort of tight end, but a rookie tight end, that's unheard of. So if you're a fantasy football player, or you're looking for that tight end to get you over the top with the playoffs coming up, Noah Fant might be a guy because the volume he's getting is huge, and he made the most of it. If Brandon Allen would have hit that inside shoulder instead of making Noah Fant turn around on that third one, it could have been 2 touchdowns and another 60-yard touchdown on top of it. So Noah Fant, I'm really excited to see more. Obviously, the tools are incredible. We're still going to get some lows. That's just the nature of the position. But man, I'm really excited to see that level of upside and athleticism over the middle of the field in this offense in Noah Fant.
Good choice, man. Very good choice. I'm going to go with Devontae Harris. And I just, every single week he gets better. That's what I love to see out of a guy like him. And his story is just incredible to see. This guy is cut by the 0-8 Bengals of all teams. And he comes here to the Broncos, finds his way onto the team, and somehow finds a role, and then all of a sudden now he's the number 2 cornerback, and every week he's out there making plays. Now he's still making mistakes, don't get me wrong. He had the missed tackle on the touchdown, and he still had times in coverage where he gets turned around and kind of trying to figure out where he's going to go, but it just looks like the Broncos keep finding these incredible diamonds in the rough for the defense this year. Guys that you just wouldn't expect to be doing what they're doing. You already talked about it with Derek Wolfe. You got DeMarcus Walker, you got Mike Purcell, you got Alexander Johnson. Todd Davis is having maybe his best year. You could make that kind of argument. Kareem Jackson's out there looking like an all-pro safety. Justin Simmons is looking like an all-pro safety. You just got these guys that a lot of them seem like they're cast-offs of other teams, and here they come in and show something. And Devontae Harris is another guy that just kind of fits into that role. And, I didn't realize, I was kind of worried about his athleticism, of how he'd hold up. He's a little bit more athletic than I thought he was. Do you remember what he ran in the 40?
I have no idea. Illinois State, I mean, that's close to me, but I think that was 2 drafts ago. But I don't get my way down to many Division II guys unless they are wow. And I remember seeing David Johnson live, going against him in high school. That was wow. Kind of followed him there.
Yeah.
But guy Illinois State, unless they're getting invited to the Senior Bowl, I'm probably not. Don't have the time to really go back and check those guys.
Okay. Well, he ran a 4.43.
Okay. That's
so
solid.
Yeah.
Not a 4.3. No, he's, what is he, 6 foot 190, 200 pounds too? I mean, that's a good profile.
Right. And I mean, he was in the 90th percentile for weight for a cornerback. And for bench press, he was in the 95th percentile. So he's actually pretty quick. He's big and he's strong. And I mean, I do think a lot of that shows up on film, actually, of his ability to kind of stick with wide receivers down the field. The thing that usually gets him actually is those comeback routes where he gets his hips turned a little bit too quick. And so that's something he's still got to work on. But at the same time, like I said, this is a guy that was a street free agent the Broncos pick up, and all of a sudden he's coming in and he's a starter. And here he is actually performing at a pretty decent level considering. And so there's still work to do. But I do think this guy could be a piece moving forward that the Broncos can at least say, okay, we got something here. We can work with this.
I agree with you. I mean, he's getting better every week. And I think he's also taken a shine to Chris Harris Jr. and Justin Simmons. So there's something to be said there. And I definitely was skeptical of him. I mean, a guy that I didn't do any scouting work on, got cut from the Bengals of all terrible teams. Reason to be skeptical, but going back, watching him, I mean, he's playing better every week, and he's going to get a chance. So, I mean, even at worst, if he's a cornerback 3 for this team next year, or cornerback 4, even cornerback 2, I mean, there's young, valuable talent there, and it's cheap, and that's what you need to build a competitive roster. So, he's in the Army now. He's a dude. Get the helmet and strap up and let's go. Speaking of guys, though, that are not doing that, the Ghost Award, Casper Award, I debated on calling it something else, the Where the Hell Are You Award. For me, Deshaun Hamilton is my guy, and I know he's out there doing the dirty work. He's out there running routes. I mean, he's still playing 60, 70% of the offensive snaps, but the last 2 weeks, and this is in a post-Emmanuel Sanders landscape, 1 target. 1 target. So I don't know if it's a scheme thing. I don't know if it's a talent thing. I don't know if it's a volume thing, but he is pretty invisible right now. And I mean, good for him not going out there and screaming, because I bet you it's frustrating to go out there, run so many routes, and not get the ball thrown at you more than 1 time. But you wanted to see more from him, and now that Emmanuel Sanders is gone, you would figure that he's going to get a much bigger piece of the pie, and that just hasn't been the case. So, Deshaun Hamilton, where are you, bud?
Yeah, that's a great choice. I mean, he is helping in the run game a lot. I've seen him be kind of like you said, he's willing to do the dirty work. So at least he is being that team player. But I kind of wonder a little bit, Noah Fant and his work over the middle is where Hamilton does his best damage. So I do wonder if they're kind of giving some of his best areas, best strengths to Noah Fant. But still, you kind of hope that this guy was going to emerge, especially, like I said, with Sanders gone. That has not happened. My guy, and it's not completely his fault. Let me get that out there at the beginning here. He kind of was the scapegoat when the run defense was doing so terrible. But it still is a little bit on him in the fact that Adam Gotsis really hasn't taken that next step. He's a guy he's been always pretty decent against the run, but you just always kept thinking this guy's going to emerge in the pass game. And I mean, I look at other guys that are really showing that huge improvement, that they've really taken those steps. I mean, DeMarcus Walker, look at the steps that he has taken this year. It's just been incredible. And that's what I wanted to see from Adam Gotsis, and it's just not happening. And so it's a little bit that it's not completely his fault, but he's still on this a little bit because of himself.
Yeah, I feel like he was a little bit scapegoated, but he just doesn't bring the pass rush that Shelby does, and you got to have Purcell out there. So it's too bad. That's a 2nd-round pick that did not really hit. I mean, that's the guy Bill Collar stood on the table for, but definitely deserving of the Ghost Award. Turn back the clock. The old guy who's playing young, I'm going to go Derek Wolfe again. I talked about him a fair times, but I mean, it really is pretty damn incredible how well he's playing, considering what he's been the past few seasons and what he's doing right now. So, I mean, he looks spry, he looks great, he looks like a guy that this team needs going forward. So, turn back the clock, Derek Wolfe, playing like it's 2015.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't think of anybody else to put on that list other than Wolf, just because he stuck out so much on he's looking like the 2015 Derek Wolfe. And that Derek Wolfe was one that had an argument for being one of the higher paid defensive ends in football. And so very, very impressed with what he's doing. Really, really hoping he's back with the Broncos next year.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing great. Best single game performance, I went with Kareem Jackson. I mean, 10 tackles, 7 solo tackles, and that goal line forced fumble that resulted in a touchback. That game was really the one where I was like, holy cow, this guy can ball, and I don't think they win that game without him. So, Kareem Jackson, I think that game was just the best single game any of the Broncos players have had this season.
Well, I almost went with Alexander Johnson against the Chargers. But
that was another good one.
That was another one. But I went Alexander Johnson against the Titans. He had 9 tackles, 6 solo tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1.5 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. That was the game where you really saw a coach really put a guy in a position to have success. And he went out there and just destroyed that Titans team. I mean, he was such an instrumental part in the Broncos getting that shutout. I just loved watching him out there. And even in pass coverage, he was showing up a little bit. And I understand Titans did not have a great quarterback. And their offensive line was still looking pretty shaky out there. But at the same time, this guy went out there and made the plays. And he definitely, you go back and you think about it, I kept going, I can't believe this guy won Player of the Month. But then you go back and you look at these games and you're going, I can't find a weak game that he's really shown there. I mean, I guess you could argue the Chiefs game, but everybody looked terrible in that game. And so beyond that, I mean, this guy was just making play after play, making impact plays that you just sit there and look, they're going to be on highlight reels for this upcoming, when the season ends.
That's a good call. The worst single game performance for me, Garrett Bowles versus Chicago. I had to go back and watch the game. I was actually at a St. Louis Cardinals baseball game when that game was happening, but went back. Garrett Bowles, as bad as it sounded, and compounding it. I mean, I know McChesney has issues with him. I know Schlereth has issues with him, but it is absolutely frustrating when he does an obvious hold and then just flicks his arms in the air like, oh, what did I do? Like, Garrett, you're doing the same exact freaking thing you've been doing since you were drafted, since you played at Utah. And if he doesn't get it by now, I don't know if he ever will, but that game, I mean, 4 penalties at home, the home crowd letting him hear it, woof.
I think there's about 3 or 4 other Bulls games that you probably could have picked between.
Yeah.
But I went with Elijah Wilkinson against the Chiefs. I mean, the entire offensive line really could belong here with how bad they all played in that game. But, I mean, Wilkinson just looked overmatched. Gave up quite a few sacks, pressures, everything, fumbles by Flacco. It just, the whole thing just plummeted to, there's so many things I could say. It was a really bad game and just really showed he does not belong at that right tackle spot. I think it's one of those that the mind is willing, but the body is not. I really do think that this guy is working his tail off. I think you watch his footwork and you watch how he's trying to actually be a good tackle out there. But it's just one of those, he doesn't have the athleticism to do it. When you're thinking about some of these edge rushers, you're talking about like Von Miller and some of those guys that can just get around the edge and snap of a finger. And when you got a guy like Elijah Wilkinson that struggles to get out of his stance, he stands no chance. And it's showing up this year, and unfortunately, he's been put in a position to fail. I do want to see him there at the right guard spot. I do think he struggled in preseason with it, but I think if you get him there consistently and you get him another year working with Munchak, you could have yourself a guy that can be a competent starter there.
Yeah, definitely think so. I think he's more of a guard, but Worst case, he's a swing tackle, and again, cheap, young, that's what you need. So break number 3, folks. We will be right back. Do not go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. Continuing the awards today, the best unit. For me, I'm going to go with the safeties. Kareem Jackson, Justin Simmons, playing as good as any safety duo in the NFL this season. And, man, we got to keep this moving. We're already at 50 minutes, but I don't think there's really much to say. Kareem Jackson, great signing. Justin Simmons, pay the man.
Yeah. I mean, I just put in a different one just to be different. But another unit that has just really, I think, been underrated this year, the defensive line. I mean, you've already talked about it with Derek Wolfe a lot. Mike Purcell has really shown up. Shelby Harris has had a few moments. He's had his struggles. But it's the backup guys. It's the depth guys that have really shocked me. Draymond Jones looks better each week. DeMarcus Walker, a guy that we're going to talk about in one of our award ceremonies that definitely is deserving of such a great award. I mean, he just actually looks like a true competent player in the NFL. Went from looking like a guy that should be cut under the last coaching regime to this year looking like a guy that you can really love to have in those sub packages getting after the quarterback.
Yeah. Worst unit, again, be cutting it short on time, et cetera, et cetera. But it's got to be the quarterback. You know, Brandon Allen got to win. And, you know, Carl, you and I are tape guys. It's pretty easy to see that he won. There were some big plays out there, and he made some plays with his legs, et cetera. But that was not a great game from the quarterback. And in the end of the day, what matters is if you win or lose. But when you're evaluating players, you have to separate them from the team result. And that's not, I don't think he's got a chance to be a backup, but he's obviously not going to be, I would be absolutely shocked if he was the guy. Absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
And Flacco's obviously not the guy either. So quarterback, it sucks until it doesn't.
Right. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 throws that I'd sit there and say, that was a nice throw. The rest of them, there's some really bad throws that actually ended up really well for him.
I feel better about the offense. I think we talked about this last week, but it was like the offense itself, Scangarello play calling, design, etc., was all better. And then the young playmakers making plays. That's what I took away. I didn't take away, oh my gosh, maybe Brandon Allen's the guy. Never once crossed my mind.
Yep, I'm with you. There were a few plays that he really missed in that one. I mean, the Noah Fant, not the touchdown. He had the seam route where he was wide open. If you hit him in stride, that's another touchdown for him. And
wrong shoulder too.
Right.
Forget
exactly.
stride, but wrong shoulder had to turn him completely around.
Right. And so you think about some of those missed opportunities under him. The Cortland Sutton touchdown, that's Sutton. That's not Brandon Allen making a play. That's Cortland Sutton. I mean, Brandon Allen gave him the chance, but honestly, that was thrown to about the worst place you could put it. And somehow Sutton came up with it. So I'm with you. I went with offensive line. I mean, that Chiefs game was a complete embarrassment. At home, looking like you stand a really good chance. This Chiefs defense has been struggling. And to go out there and give 8 sacks up, just can't have it. I mean, it really has. You were hoping that Munchak would have that really big boost this year. It's just not showing up, mostly just because he just was not given very good pieces to work with.
And it was always going to take time.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
How many times can we say that? Best play, just last week, that Fant 75-yard touchdown. I know wide receivers are more sexy. Phillip Lindsay's the hometown dude, but you got to be kidding yourself if you didn't think I was going to be talking about that Iowa Hawkeye tight end making a play like that, hauling it in across and then breaking 2 tackles and then getting up to 20 miles an hour as a 6'4", 250-pound tight end. Are you kidding me? Play of the year. Absolutely amazing. Need to see more of it, obviously, but that's why you took him at 20 overall. That's why you don't quit on talent. What a damn play.
So I'm going to change up from what I actually put in here because you reminded me of it. The Kareem Jackson goal line stand.
Yes.
That was a play that I just couldn't believe. Like, I'm just sitting there going, how'd he do that? It looked like it was a walk-in touchdown, and this guy comes flying out of nowhere and just makes the play of the game. Looking like the Chargers are about to get back into this thing. And he just really, I mean, just made such an individual effort that you just love to see on the field. So I got to give it to Kareem Jackson. I got to give it to a defender because they're the ones that have been carrying this team. I know it's not been a great season, but that defense has been keeping them in every single game almost.
Yep, I agree. Honorable mention to that Cortland Sutton catch, but honestly, my favorite Cortland Sutton catch was the one in the Chargers game. I feel like that one doesn't get enough credence. Yeah, he hauled it down a contested catch, and then he just stiff-armed and trucked that guy, and then took it, 60 yards or something.
Yep.
So explosive pass offense. Maybe it's me scouting the Chiefs. Maybe it's me scouting great wide receivers. But, you got to have it. And I know we're kind of used to this Peyton Manning nickel and diming down the field. But I really think you got to get these chunk yards. And we're starting to see that with some of these playmakers. So really exciting. Worst play. I don't want to get too much booing in here or not too much woe is me. But again, back to that Bears game. Bradley Chubb called for that roughing the passer. I know we have an E rating on here, but bullshit. Bullshit. What about you, Carl?
Well, even the NFL came out afterwards and said it was BS. So,
God.
Yeah, no, I went with.
He got pushed into him.
He did.
I'm going to get mad.
Okay,
I'm going to scream. I'm going to break somebody's eardrums. We're going to get sued.
I'm going to go the Vaughn missing the sack in the Colts game, leading to the huge play to T.Y. Hilton. How often does Vaughn miss a sack like that? Not often. Was set up so perfect for the Broncos to close out that game. And it just, that whole sequence of events with the offense pretty much giving up and just saying, defense, please go win this for us. And then you have that, then you got the horse collar penalty. Just that whole thing just deserves to be a worst play all combined because it just was like this living nightmare that you could not wake up from. And that was terrible. I don't know how the Broncos lose that game, but they found a way.
They've found a way a few times this year. The defense, honestly, they've been good, but they've just not been clutch. So they got clutch on this past Sunday. So we'll see what happens. Time for me to eat some crow. DeMarcus Walker. You know what, folks? I am just going to be such a jerk here. I still think the 51st overall pick, considering he is not a starter, was not exactly what you want. I don't ever see a base package player there. I'm looking for a little bit better skill set, but you know what? He is not a bust. He's by far the best player in that class. And even if he's just a 3 technique and a sub package and get after the passer there, getting after the quarterback from the interior is a valuable skill set. So, and he's playing playing the best football of his career. He's still cheap. He's still got another year and a half of him left. So there's that's give me the crow, folks. He's playing well. He blocked me on Twitter. LOL. Ha ha ha. But, he probably rightfully so because I've been calling him out and, living legend 44. He's not a living legend yet by any means in the NFL standard, but is he a complete bust? No, not at all. He's a valuable player on this defensive front and he brings a valuable type of skill set that this team needs. So give me that crow. DeMarcus Walker playing well.
Well, I got to go Cortland Sutton. How many times on this podcast did I say, I don't like this guy? I think he's just too big of a project for the Broncos and how much they have a need at the wide receiver position for this guy to turn into something in a hurry. And yet he's going out there looking like a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL right now. I'm not going to put him on that list quite yet. We already had that conversation, but he's working his way into that. There was other guys that I was really wanting at that position in the draft. And right now, Broncos look like they found themselves a star. And so I'm willing to eat that crow, and I can't wait to see what this guy can do even as the years go on, because like you already said, he hasn't even hit his ceiling yet. That's what's scary about this kid. Yeah, no, it's there. I'm still absolutely shocked. What is he, 6'3", 215, 220? I think 6'4", 215. But he had a 96 percentile 3 cone. So that change of direction, the leaping, the ball skills, the physicality, if that can continue to be improved upon with the route running and nuance, we're talking about a legitimate top 10 wide receiver. I don't think that's crazy to say. I don't either. Honestly, I think I'm almost at that point where I'm willing to say next year Cortland Sutton is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. I might be right there with you. He is. There's a reason he fell to the second round as far as the skill set, but Tom Brady fell to the 6th round. Guys miss
on players all the time. But man, he's if there's any jerseys right now of any Broncos you're looking to buy, it's Bradley Chubb and Cortland Sutton, like for long-term value. Because those are the guys that, I mean, we'll talk about this next week's episode, but he's a dude. He's an absolute dude, all caps. DOOD. So, all right, now it's time for the special teams MVP. I just see what you wrote down, Carl. I'm going to go Casey Kreider, just because I wanted a chance to say go Hawks.
I put your mom, but
she's special.
I'm sorry.
In my heart.
I know. I'm sorry. But no, it's, I mean, it's been the worst unit.
Yeah.
I was just saying something with how bad the offense has been. And I mean, McManus has been pretty good this year, mostly spot on most of the time. Couple misses here and there, but the entire coverage unit, I mean, our punter has been about as inconsistent as anybody out there. I mean, I had somebody say, I think it was in the comments section of our last game, something about why is it that every other punter can come to Denver and have their career game and we can't find a punter? And it's true. The Broncos just seem to struggle to find anybody that can consistently just do great things as a punter. And you'd think Denver would be the perfect place, but yet it's still been a struggle. So I guess probably your guy is right. Go Hawks, I guess, because he's been the most. I'm
going to throw one out there.
Okay.
Deontay Spencer.
Well,
he's provided a good boost. I mean, they're not really giving him much chance in kickoffs because altitude kicking out of the back of the end zone. But as far as the explosiveness and also the sure-handedness of punt and kick returns, he deserves a shout-out.
He does. It's just, it seems like once a game he makes a terrible mistake of when to actually take a return.
Mm-hmm.
And
at least
so,
he's not muffing it. I don't know. Maybe
right.
my bar is so
you're right,
low.
but it's still, there's been a couple times where you're like, man, you just hurt the team. And so I guess that's a little bit of why he's not been in the league. Because, I mean, he is explosive. I mean, he was in the top 5, I think, for fastest players this last week. So he's exactly what the Broncos need when their offense is struggling, to get a guy that can actually return it 50 yards or take it to the house, whatever it may be. And so I appreciate that part. And you're right. He does definitely deserve a shout out, but it's still wildly inconsistent is I guess the best way to put it this year.
Yep, that's fine. I feel like he's still probably the best they've had in a good long while in that position. Offensive MVP, I'm going to go Phillip Lindsay. We have not talked about on this podcast yet, and when you said, the heart of the offense, Dalton Reisner, maybe the heart of the offensive line, but Phillip Lindsay's, for me, I don't think it's that close, the heart of the offense. He's running really well. They're not giving him a huge workload, but he's still carrying it super efficiently. You know what his yards per carry was in the last game?
I do not.
It was over 10. Over 10 yards per carry. I mean, it's crazy. But I think that's probably not the worst idea. If Royce Freeman is out snapping him right now, it's long-term versus short-term, delayed gratification, and I want Phillip Lindsay to be here 10 years, and that's not happening if you're giving him the ball 30 times a game. So I'm fine with the limited usage. If the Broncos are in the playoffs, things change, that's for sure. But right now, I'm fine with that, and I think that he is a guy that is my offensive MVP so far. I just, he's the heart, he's the soul, and he's a guy that I know we always talk, specifically me, talk down about the value of running back, but from an emotional standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from an explosiveness standpoint, I mean, this team, if they're going to be successful, it probably comes with the defense in the ground game. That's just how it's built the next couple seasons. You have some explosive playmakers on the outside, but still I don't see it becoming a great high-volume pass offense just yet. So Phillip Lindsay, offensive MVP.
Yeah, and it does sound like the Broncos would like to see him here longer than just his rookie contract. So, I mean, you're right. He's been a very explosive player for the Broncos, and even with an inconsistent offensive line, an inconsistent passing game, this guy still seems to find a way to make some kind of play throughout a game. And it's been unfortunate. Actually, some of his biggest plays this year have been called back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, his stats should be a lot better than what they are. And so when the offensive line gets a lot more consistent, I can't wait to see what this guy can do. But the obvious choice, I think, has to be Cortland Sutton. I mean, he's been, like I said, even with not having a true number 2 next to him, he's still out there making plays. He's the guy that's making explosive plays. He's making the easy catches. He's making the third down catches, the fourth down catches. He's been the guy that when the Broncos need a play, Cortland Sutton is the guy. And so he definitely deserves to be in that conversation with Phillip Lindsay. Let's go to defensive MVP here.
I think this should be our last one too, Carl. We're getting already at an hour and 5 minutes. We got some other ones here, folks. Hit us up on Twitter if you are curious.
Yep. All right. Defensive MVP. I'm going to go Justin Simmons.
All right.
And he is such a perfect fit for this defense. And I love that he has just really come into his own, and we're really at that point where we're not even arguing whether he should be a top 5 paid safety in the NFL. Like he's playing like a top 5 paid, or he's playing like a top 5 safety in the NFL. And he's looking like a guy that's just still hasn't even hit his ceiling yet. So I can't wait till he gets a little bit more consistent play around him when the offense can actually go out and score points and the defense gets a chance to have a lot more turnovers. I think this guy could really explode and just become that household name for the Broncos moving forward. Be that next great safety in Denver. He just has such potential, and you look at that, the athletic traits are finally starting to turn into a true NFL player. And I love it.
Game looks like it's starting to slow down for him too.
Yep.
Like mentally. Like last year it looked like he was sinking a little bit. If that makes sense. Put a little bit too much on his plate. Tried to make him be a Derwin James coming down. Right now he's playing a little bit more that back end. Not like a cover one, but in the back end coming down and making plays also still. I mean, the game looks like it's slowed down, and one of the things about this defensive scheme that can be a nuisance sometimes, but it can really highlight some guys as well, is if they are intelligent players, they can find a usage for them in this scheme. And Justin Simmons, by all accounts, is a very smart player, and he's stepping up and starting to be a leader. So I think they're, give him the check. What does he want? Pay the man. I guess not to end it on a bad note. What is the one attribute that you would say that you wish Justin Simmons did have that he doesn't really have? Like if there was a skill set on Madden where you get the little placard like ball hawk, sound tackler or whatever. For me, it'd be big hitter. He's the one thing for this safety position, especially coming down how they play the alley. You're never going to see him absolutely jar somebody. That's just not his game. That's probably the one thing that keeps me from wanting to pay him as the best safety in football. Granted, it's not about being the best safety in football. It's about who's the next good person to get paid at that position. That's just kind of how it works with the ever-increasing salary cap. But I guess that would be my one thing. But still, I'm really nitpicking there. He's playing at a great level, and he should absolutely get in the Pro Bowl this season.
Yeah, I wonder, just because he's not that household name, whether he'll actually get in. But it's kind of like Chris Harris. Took him a couple of years of actually playing at an elite level before somebody actually put him in. But no, I guess that would maybe be it. Just he is a little bit on the smaller, skinnier side. I mean, not short, but I mean,
scrawny.
He is scrawny. But it is what allows him to be so athletically gifted and explosive to go make a lot of plays around the field. And so I guess I'm willing to sacrifice that for what else he brings, because you see him bulk up, you might lose some of those other things, but it's one of those, you can't have everything.
Nope. If Sutton ran a 4.3, if Simmons was 6'4", 240 pounds, then they're not on the Broncos because they'd have been top 5 picks. That kind of thing. So, all right. Well, Carl, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you for, the late night bye-week podcast with me. And thank you guys for listening to another episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your comments can help us in so many ways. It can give us feedback, it can help us with the algorithms, etc., etc. So we really appreciate those guys. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.